How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Carpo's channel. I'm really going to try to make this video less than 20 minutes. Dang it, I said it again. Now it'll probably be 25. But really, I was going to do this on my other channel. I just finished making a video and I was going to talk about happiness during a little talk session and never got around to it. So I thought, well, I need to make another video and talk about happiness and what I meant and what it means to me to be happy. And I'm not going to get into the petty details about, what we should be doing as a species or how wrong we are or how right we are. I just wanted to talk about that. I wanted to say that you deserve happiness. You deserve happiness. All of us deserve happiness. And we have to work for it in whatever way we can. I have to think about whether or not I want to mention this quote I heard a little while ago. Because when I say certain quotes, I feel like they're kind of harsh. Maybe that they're not taken right. It was Manly Hall, and I was walking through, and I had my Zune on random, and it came on, so I heard this line as I walked through the room. I'll hear these lines, and it's always something pertinent. And he said, "No man is born equal," which would fly in the face of conventional beliefs or conventional ideas about, morality and equality. But to follow up and summarize, he says, we're not born equal. We're born into this world and we have to prove our worthiness, prove our equality. And part of this is showing that we're good people. In other words, there's always an eye on everybody until they grow up, right? Kids are always, they're always watched over by an adult. This is because we don't know what they're going to do and you can't trust them to be alone. And so as they grow and they show that they're more responsible and we teach them, then they can go off on their own and then they become a citizen and, they're considered an equal citizen as long as they're responsible. It's obviously the people in prison aren't equal on free level. And when I talk about equality, I'm not talking about like a general human right to freedom. I'm just, because we all have that, but I'm talking about being treated as an equal within your own society and having the people on the street respect you in the way that you respect other people. You have to show. And part of that is finding your happiness. Because if you're a grumpy person, if you're always upset and you're always pissed about something, and you're always finding the faults in everything that goes on in your life, you're gonna suffer for it. It happens every time. And another thing that I have learned is that no matter what problem you have, if you try to fight against it, it'll come at you harder. It'll always keep coming back. I mean, you can't really deny something like that. We all know that problems seem to recur. Maybe it's not a different problem, maybe it's the exact same problem that was never taken care of in the first place, never mended. So, to stay on the happiness route, I've learned that true happiness comes from being content with what you have. But I've also contemplated that and what that means for people who would like to tell poor people that it doesn't matter if you're not rich. In other words, the whole meek shall inherit the earth attitude was very popular for a long time. And it worked really well for those who had means to tell others who didn't, oh, don't worry about it, you're happier the way you are. But the fact is, they have done now polls globally and found out that people in poorer areas generally are happier people. So what does that say? It says that many different cultures that are working towards progress often have everything they need right there within their culture to be happy. But most of all, each individual within that culture has the ability to be happy. I know there are folks who grow up in poverty and all kinds of issues with migration or pain, physical or mental anguish, and I don't know. Pain. the whole mental anguish thing. Sorry, my battery's dying here. It really bothers me that people pull the pity act, and that's kind of what I need to talk about here. The people pull that shit where, oh, poor me, I'm not, society hasn't treated me fairly, and it's every race, every creed, every culture, every religion. There are people everywhere who are complainers. And complainers are just never happy. You can never make them happy. You can never be happy around them. And these are the people who become the energy vampires. That's how we describe them anyway. And that's how I describe them. And they will suck your energy, often unwillingly. They don't realize what they're doing. They are a pain to be around. They are exhausting, Something I learned a long time ago is an example of that. When I go shopping or when I go to work or drive somewhere, it's not the drive that bothers me. I should say, sorry, it's not the place I'm going to that stresses me out. It's the drive itself that bothers me. I don't like driving. I don't like being on the road. It's just, and it doesn't matter how clear it is, how calm it is, how calm I am. There are moments where I'm totally relaxed, of course, and I'm not just totally stressing out. But I used to drive in like bumper-to-bumper traffic down through Portland to get home after work, for about a year when I was working in the West Hills, and many various years before that. But during that period, I noticed on the days when I drove and traffic was bad, I was much more tired than if I worked an extra hour or two and then drove home. I would actually be less stressed out, so I'd be less tired, because that stress takes a huge toll on us. Me learning to conquer that stress, that was a huge turning point in my life where I realized I can do this, I can dominate. That's like the last thing that I have to conquer. Well, I think that we can all be happy, and I think we all deserve to be happy. So, I'll try to wrap this up by getting, I guess, to a point, if there is one. Through mental transmutation and awareness of your surroundings and awareness of who you are and the strength in knowing yourself and a willingness to know yourself and others, you can find true happiness in a very, very simple thing like just living and existence. But you will always want to yearn for something greater unless you're the kind of person who doesn't. In other words, some people can choose solitude, or what you might call asceticism, where people don't even eat or use any worldly possessions, and they claim that's what brings them happiness. That was one of the things that Buddha did that he says didn't work, but people still do it. Because it doesn't matter who in history or which historical text, whether metaphoric or literal, it doesn't matter what stories are told to us over and over again, people still go out and make those same mistakes. One of those mistakes is staying with somebody you're unhappy with, or at a job that you totally hate, or where you're treated disrespectfully, or even putting up with some of your own shortcomings, And we all have shortcomings to work on, but if we don't work on them, then the happiness can be overrun by that stress that wakes you up in the middle of the night and tells you need to take care of it. So I just want to say that I'd love to see a world of happy people, but I know that that's a ridiculous notion. In other words, utopia, the idea that we can all be in this great state of bliss all the time, is ludicrous. It's impossible. It can't exist because pain and pleasure are entwined very deeply. What the ancients would call the pendulum, if you will. In the mystery schools, it would be like the pendulum, which could be the yin and yang as well. And the balance of the yin and yang doesn't have to be an interpretation of male and female. It can mean a pendulum. It can mean, if you can't experience bad, you'll never know the true good. So we as a species go through bad times at different times, and we try to cope with it as best we can. Try not to affect those around us negatively when we're feeling bad. And try really hard not to be a dick, basically. Or a bitch. Or whatever else. Just try not to be a jerk. And I try really, really hard not to be a jerk. but I still do sometimes, and it's usually only in defense when I feel like somebody's treading on my space, my personal zone, So, and that means somebody who's overstepping their boundaries. I don't care if somebody argues with me or has a different point. I love that. That's what I'm all about in life. But it's when a person continues to nag and push buttons and press, or just uses outrageously offensive comments or ideas, and if a loved one does it, if a friend does it, if anybody does it, I don't tolerate it. And so in my day-to-day life, I generally don't have too much of a problem with people. It's just I know how much that affects individual happiness too. When people are bombarded with a husband or a wife that's really, let's say, jealous or very controlling or very violent or very abusive, mentally or physically. And I'll tell you, that takes the biggest toll. And the reason I mentioned just work and spouse is because work and spouse take up your entire life. You have 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours with your spouse, and 8 hours at work. In between, take off a few for driving and whatnot, but you know what I'm saying. People only have so much time. You've got to think about where you spend. It's just like sleeping on a bad bed and waking up with a bad back. And I've been through that for a long time. Then changed over to another bed or slept on a different mattress and be like, whoa, man. Because you spend so much time sleeping, And I feel like the bed that you lay in, and that's why, bed is used as, I guess, a metaphor for that. You made your bed and you'll lie in it. That's another way that could work, I guess, play on words. Ultimately, life is an experience of trying to be as happy as possible, I guess. It's very simple. It seems very simple to me. That we're just trying to be happy. And the only time that, here's the thing. It can be a false happiness. You can create a false reality for yourself, and that's okay. In other words, if a person believes in God, let's say, what's wrong with that, right? I've had arguments with people who call me a full-blown, they say you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, you don't believe in anything. And I've had other people tell me, oh, you're just a God believer, and you know what I'm saying, from both ends. The extreme Christian and the extreme atheist have both attacked me because I do believe in what a person may call God. But that's because that's part of my happiness, and I don't create that God to make myself happy. And that's the huge difference, is I spent my whole life trying to figure out what the truth is about reality and whether or not certain things could be known, and came to the conclusion through enough personal experience and understanding to believe that the universe is conscious, and that is God to me. It's not a man in a beard, it's not even a conscious individual God, but start to believe in these forces, these other, existing dimensions and whatnot. Some of them which I think I've seen on certain substances, but I won't get into that. The point being that a delusion created, as long as it's healthy and it's harming no one, if it be a delusion, can be a great thing for people. And this is what a lot of people consider religion to be, is, like Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion is the book he wrote. And I was never a fan of Dawkins because he was always so harsh of an atheist. In other words, he doesn't just not believe, he doesn't believe with a vengeance. And that's fine for some people. And I was that way for a long time. For a couple of decades, seriously. I was very harsh on Christians. And even on YouTube the last few years, I've been kind of mean to some Christians I've known, but I've met so many great Christians that have shown me that not all of them are Bible-thumping, everything else bashing people, because so many I had met in the past were. So I respect religion, and I don't think that people who believe religion are just dumb, but they deserve to find happiness too. So if you're happy with your spouse, or your loved one, or your children, making a good relationship with your children, then that's great. Then if you make sure your bed's nice and comfy, that's great. And then you make sure that where you work, not only do you like the job, but you feel good about what it's doing for the world. And you feel like you're progressing and at least meeting people or doing something that makes people happy. Whatever it may be. It can be a mundane job. It doesn't have to be important, because everything's important. It all is part of the picture. So with those things out of the way, the only thing left was, the religion. That's why I tackled it. Or belief systems. And this can include political belief systems too. Because some people adhere to their political beliefs like a religion. I mean, they won't sway for anything. I'm a conservative. I'm a liberal, Well, me personally, I'm just a guy. I'm a person who was born. Maybe not born equal, but I feel like I've earned my way. And now I am a citizen of a great country trying to make a better world for all the people in it. And kind of at a loss sometimes. And that's maybe where a lack of happiness comes in. Being so out of our control to do anything about so many of the world's issues and gripes, it becomes frustrating at times. You want to help people, you want to do things. For example, I want to answer every message people send me. I get messages, then I get emails, and I try to answer them all because I feel like, well, the ones where people really ask me a question and they want to know something. And I feel like in life that's important, that we, answer questions, but without saying, this is the truth. But being there for people, for one another, even if it's somebody we don't know. It's really hard to do that. But that brings happiness. That's what they call service. And even whether it be religion or atheism, doesn't matter. Whatever your beliefs are, we all serve each other because we know we need to. And we have public servants that work in office, which is what gave me the newfound respect over the past few years for politics and an understanding for the need for a political system as well as capital and as well as, money. And even promissory notes or dollar bills. All these things have their place for a reason. That it's not just an elite that pulled the wool over all of our eyes, that we've all created this system. And the sweat of our ancestors has brought us to an amazing place where we have a digital revolution going on. We can communicate the speed of light and put our, at least in many countries at least, say what we want to say and say what we mean to say without being, censored too much. And there is a lot of censorship going on, and that needs to be stopped. But the point is, if you've got something to say, you can say it. And I believe that's what makes people happy too. That's where the ultimate happiness comes from, is expressing ourselves, how we truly feel. There was a point where I remember asking myself, can people really, people say if you don't let out your aggression, you'll just bottle it up. And I want, that's what we're told, right? When you're a kid. Or resentment or anything like that. And it is true. It does seem to do that. It does seem to build. My question was, can you constructively ease that steam without actually getting angry or feeling angry? And yes, you can. For me, getting angry is a momentary, and then it passes. I'm very seldom angry for more than 1 minute, and I've made it a point to try to get that down, or maybe even 30 seconds, I get really frustrated, but generally I'm angry and done within 10 seconds, especially because I have kids and I have to yell at them, and I have to get mad, and I don't really feel mad inside, but I know I have to punish them or else they'll keep doing it, and it makes it really difficult to know exactly how to react. But if you have kids, if you're married, whatnot, you have somebody else in your life that you're responsible to, then also your happiness is dependent on their happiness. You have to make them happy too, and you have to realize that we can't hide from the true reality of who we are from our friends or loved ones, and we shouldn't want to. We should be able to be brutally honest. Like they say in today's world, nothing is secret, nothing is sacred, especially with the internet. So it was about 4 years ago, I made it a point to say, all right, well, then I'm just not going to have anything to hide. I'm going to make sure I play everything legitimate. And there really aren't any laws that I need to break or any, things that I can't say that I don't say already. And I feel like a very free person because of that. And I'm very grateful for existing and for being here and being able to share it with all of you. There you go. Have some vapor. It's like my pipe, my philosophy pipe. Whenever I'm thinking, I'm vaping. life is good if we make it good. Have a good day, everybody.